Okay, so Nicole Kidman and Keith Urban were together for almost 20 years, but it's over now, and people are pretty surprised by how it all went down. They always seemed so solid, smiling at award shows and saying nice things about each other. Seemed like they beat the odds of being famous and staying together, but then Nicole filed for divorce and bam, the fairy tale was done. It got messy fast. Keith went on stage, putting on these crazy shows that felt like he was really hurting. Nicole, on the other hand, stayed calm and let her actions speak for themselves. This isn't just about a breakup. It's about love, fame, being real, and those private struggles that red carpets never show. If you like stories like this, hit the like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next part. To get what happened, we have to go back to how it all began. Before Nicole Kidman became a superstar, she was just a shy kid finding her way. Born in Honolulu in 1967 while her Australian parents were living there, Nicole had a mixed upbringing. Her dad, a mental health expert and biochemist, was all about structure and brains, while her mom, a nurse and teacher, encouraged creativity and kindness. When the family moved back to Sydney, Nicole's personality was already developing, but not how you'd expect for a future star. Far from confident, she was super shy. Teachers remembered her blushing so hard when called on in class that she'd freeze up. Speaking in public terrified her, but she made up for her lack of confidence with imagination. She found comfort in dance, then acting classes, and finally in local theater groups where, for the first time, she realized she could show feelings she couldn't say out loud. Acting gave her a place where her shyness didn't matter because, on stage, she could be anyone. By her teens, her talent was obvious. Australia's film and TV scene was taking off, and Nicole jumped at every chance she got. She was in commercials, TV movies, and at just 16, she starred in the classic BMX Bandits. That role, along with her striking height, fair skin, and expressive eyes, got the attention of American filmmakers. Soon, Hollywood called, and Nicole was thrown into a world she'd only dreamed of. Even with success, she still struggled with the pressures of fame. The young actress who used to be scared of classrooms was suddenly handling huge events worldwide, balancing ambition with vulnerability. That vulnerability would shape her choices, not just in her career but in her personal life too. While fans were seeing a gifted actress with endless potential, Nicole was still searching for love, family, and a place where she truly belonged. That search led her to a relationship that gave her fame, pain, and scars that would stay with her for years. But before Keith Urban came along, someone else had already changed her life forever. By the end of the 80s, Nicole Kidman's career was really taking off. Hollywood noticed how good she was, and that's when she met Tom Cruise, one of the biggest stars ever. They clicked right away and got hitched in 1990, becoming a top celebrity couple. Magazines couldn't get enough of them. They were young, good-looking, and seemed unstoppable. For Nicole, who was kind of shy and unsure of herself, being with this major star felt unreal. But behind the perfect image, things were tricky. Tom was super into Scientology, which is kind of a controversial thing, and it quickly became a big deal in their marriage. It was tough on Nicole. She didn't talk about it much, but people said the demands of Scientology and how much control it had put a strain on them. The worst part came after they split up in 2001. They had 2 kids together, Isabella and Connor, who mostly lived with Tom after the divorce. People say that Nicole became distant from them, which she didn't really talk about, but it really hurt her. Family and stability were always important to her, so this separation was devastating. Ending her marriage with Tom was really hard on Nicole. Not just personally, she kept it together in public, not showing too much sadness, but it left its mark. Those times changed how she thought about love, family, and getting through tough times. It makes sense that when she met Keith Urban later, she was determined to create the kind of home and family she felt like she had lost. What happened in the past helped her see why her with Keith was so strong, and why she held on to it so tight. Keith Urban's early life and struggles. Keith Lionel Urban's life started pretty differently from Nicole's. He was born in Whangarei, New Zealand in 1967, but he moved with his family to Queensland, Australia, when he was little. His dad, Bob, owned a small shop and really loved country music, which had a big impact on Keith. By 6, he was playing guitar, and soon after, he was performing at small local events. Country music wasn't very mainstream in Australia, but for Keith, it was his safe space and who he was. Life at home wasn't always easy. It seems like money problems and family stress gave Keith a hard time early on. Music became his escape, but it was also his only way forward. As a teen, he was in talent shows, playing in bars and building a reputation as a thoughtful outsider with amazing talent. He quit school and put everything he had into music. There was no backup plan. That gamble ended up paying off. After years of hard work, Keith's self-titled U.S. debut in 1999 made him one of country music's most talked-about new artists. With his messy hair, intense eyes, and great guitar skills, he quickly became a heartthrob. But fame came with its own problems. By his 20s, Keith had already started messing around with alcohol and drugs. The bigger he got, the harder it was to control those habits. Success didn't calm him down. It made things worse. By the time he met Nicole in 2005, Keith had been to rehab several times. On stage, he was amazing, but behind the scenes, he was dealing with problems most fans never saw. He always worried that his addictions would take everything from him, his career, his relationships, and even his life. In some ways, that vulnerability was part of what drew Nicole to him. She saw not just a talented musician, but a guy trying to find balance in a world that often demands too much. She understood his pain, and he understood hers. When they met, it felt like fate. Two wounded people looking for healing in each other. But, as we would find out later, that combination of passion and fragility would also be the starting point of their biggest heartaches. Back in the early 2000s, Nicole Kidman had rebuilt her life after her tough split from Tom Cruise. She'd won an Oscar for The Hours and become one of Hollywood's top actresses. But under all the fame, she still wanted something deeper. Stability, love, and a chance at family, which she felt she'd missed out on. Keith Urban was on a different road. He was getting big in Nashville, winning over fans with his honest songs and guitar-filled performances. But even with all the attention, he worried his issues with staying sober could ruin everything. In a way, both Nicole and Keith were at turning points when they met. They met at the G-Day USA event in Los Angeles in January 2005, which celebrated Aussies in America. Nicole, classy and cool, was a star that night. Keith, with his quiet charm and growing fame, was there as the country singer everyone was talking about. Nicole said later she wasn't sure if Keith liked her at first. He was polite but reserved, and even though he got her number, he didn't call for months. It almost ended before it began, but then Keith finally called and they just clicked. Things moved fast from there. By May, they were spotted together, and by the end of the year, Nicole was openly saying he was the guy who had totally won her over. What she saw in Keith was different from what she was used to. Tom Cruise had been polished, controlled, and heavily guarded, but Keith was raw, passionate, and real. He wasn't perfect, and maybe that's why Nicole was drawn to him. To her, he represented freedom and truth. To Keith, she was class, stability, and proof that he had really made it, not just in music, but in life. By late 2005, it was clear to them and the paparazzi that this was more than just a fling. It was two different worlds, two lives, and two wounded people who thought they had found what they were looking for in each other. And by mid-2006, they were ready to make it official. The Shining Duo Wedding, 2006. If their meeting felt like fate, their wedding seemed like a fairy tale. On June 25, 2006, Nicole Kidman and Keith Urban got married in a beautiful ceremony at the Cardinal Chiretti Memorial Sanctuary in Sydney. It was fancy, but also felt personal, with movie stars, country singers, and family there. Nicole wore a Balenciaga dress with a cool headpiece and walked into the church lit by candles. People said she was holding back tears as she walked down the aisle. Keith, with his long hair and guitar, sang for her at the party, which everyone felt was very sweet and romantic. For the news, it was a big moment. Movie star meets country star, a symbol of two different worlds coming together. The photos in magazines all over the world showed that Nicole had found someone who loved her no matter what, and Keith had found comfort with her, one of the world's biggest actresses. The shining duo from Hollywood and Nashville were together. For fans, their marriage wasn't just another celebrity fling. It was proof that real love can beat hard times and that two people with flaws can unite and heal each other. After the pain of her divorce and being away from her kids, Nicole looked like she'd finally found peace. Keith, after his struggles with addiction and being unsure of himself, seemed to have found his place. But fairy tales don't always last. Even with all the candlelight and music, trouble was brewing. Just 4 months after the wedding, Keith checked himself into rehab for alcohol abuse. A big blow to their new awesome marriage and the first crack in their carefully made story. Still, at that moment, their wedding was a symbol of hope and new beginnings. Two celebrities who'd been through a lot promised to move forward as one. The world wanted to believe in them. And maybe they believed in the fairy tale too, but life has a way of testing even the greatest starts. Trouble right away. Getting help amp. Problems just 4 months after their wedding. Cracks started showing in Nicole and Keith's relationship. Big time. In October 2006, Keith checked himself into rehab for drinking. For many couples, that kind of thing so soon after getting married could be the end. But for Nicole, it was a test and she decided to face it head on. Things got tough quick. Nicole barely finished writing thank you notes when the media jumped on the story. Suddenly, everyone saw them not as a perfect couple, but something darker. Headlines made Keith look like a train wreck and Nicole someone who'd married into trouble. But she refused to let the world define their relationship. Instead, she stood by him, visited him in rehab, and tried to keep their private struggles out of the public eye. Keith later said Nicole saved his life during this time, calling her support the thing that kept him going. For him, it wasn't just about love, it was about survival. But friends said things were more complicated. Nicole couldn't save her marriage with Tom Cruise, and now she was throwing herself into being Keith's savior. It wasn't just about love. It was about proving to herself that she could keep a family together this time. The public, on the other hand, only saw strength. For fans, their story was inspiring, proof that love could last through anything. But in private, a pattern was forming. Nicole became the protector while Keith was always the one who needed saving. For a while, it worked. But years later, that difference caused problems they didn't see coming. For now, though, they came out of the crisis looking stronger, ready to take on the world together. And soon, life would throw even bigger challenges their way, balancing careers, kids, and being famous. After Keith finished treatment, they put in a lot of effort to rebuild their life together. From the outside, they seemed like they had it all. Nicole kept killing it in movies, and Keith kept rocking as a country star, winning awards and packing venues. Their love story looked better than ever. Keith always gushed about Nicole, sometimes getting teary-eyed. Nicole said he brought her back to life. They looked super into each other at events, proving their relationship was only getting stronger. But fame came with a cost. One problem was being apart. With Nicole filming everywhere and Keith always touring, they were often separated for long stretches. They tried to stick to rules, like never being apart for more than a few weeks, but insiders were saying their schedules clashed more than they admitted. Nicole, who knew what it was like to be away from her kids with Tom Cruise, always worried about missing family time. When they had their daughters, Sunday Rose in 2008 and Faith Margaret in 2010, Nicole went all in on being a mom. She didn't want to repeat past mistakes and really valued family life. Keith loved his kids. As a touring musician, it was hard to balance his career with being a dad. Nicole was all about planning, while Keith was more spontaneous, which sometimes caused friction. Still, they showed the world they were beating the odds. Pictures of Nicole with the girls at airports while Keith handled the luggage became symbols of their teamwork. They appeared united. The pressure of balancing fame, family, and personal struggles was quietly taking a toll. What people didn't see was their marriage was becoming a constant tug-of-war. It was a fight between being close and being far apart, duty and freedom, order and chaos. People thought they were unbreakable, but the seeds of future problems were already being sown. Stay tuned for the next part of the story. Back when their love story was just taking off, sometime in the late 2000s and early 2010s, Nicole and Keith shaped an image of themselves that became bigger than life. With their fancy red carpet appearances, heartfelt speeches, and family photos, they seemed like the rare couple in Hollywood with a love that could last. People saw them as proof that real relationships could survive fame, addiction, and time apart. Nicole often said that Keith had brought her back to life, and Keith always gushed with gratitude during award shows. Their love story wasn't just inspiring for fans, it was a sign that things could work out. But away from the cameras, things weren't so perfect. The same things that brought them together were also pulling them apart. Nicole, after past disappointments, wanted stability and routine. Keith, being restless, needed freedom and spontaneity. It wasn't anything major, but little tensions that slowly wore away at their closeness. Friends said that Nicole sometimes felt like she was carrying the emotional weight of the marriage, and Keith didn't like always being seen as the one who needed saving. He admired her strength, but sometimes felt overshadowed by it. She loved that he could be vulnerable, but worried it might destroy what they had built. Their relationship became a constant tug-of-war. one wanting peace, the other pushing against being controlled. Having kids made these differences even clearer. Nicole leaned towards rules and structure, wanting to shield their daughters from the chaos of fame. Keith played the role of the fun dad, easygoing and laid back. Their girls loved them both, but people close to the family hinted that Nicole sometimes felt undermined, while Keith sometimes felt judged. But in public, they were still the perfect couple. Every smile, every touch, every loving comment reinforced the image. But as history often shows, fairy tales are easier to act out than to live. And by the mid-2010s, those little cracks were becoming harder to hide. Speculations amp, breakups, 2015-2024. By the mid-2010s, people started whispering more about Nicole and Keith maybe not being so happy. Tabloids went wild, guessing it was everything from their schedules clashing to Keith staying out late and Nicole getting fed up. Insiders hinted at fights, and sometimes the paparazzi snapped pics of Nicole at events solo or Keith without his wedding ring. The stories often painted a picture of them growing apart, but every time they'd come back strong, acting like everything was perfect. Nicole would tell reporters, all calm and collected, "We've never been better," shutting down the rumors. Keith would say the same, always talking about how she was his rock and the love of his life. On red carpets, they'd hold hands tight, smiling for the cameras like they were trying to prove everyone wrong. For years, it worked. Fans wanted to believe, and a lot of people took their word for it. But those close to them saw the effort behind the smiles. Friends said Nicole seemed tired sometimes, worn out from being the strong one, while Keith would get snappy about people thinking he needed saving. People also noticed little changes. Nicole's smile started looking a little fake. Keith's gushing about her, while sweet, sometimes sounded like lines from a script instead of real feelings. It wasn't that they didn't love each other, it was just that they were working harder to keep up the act. Even with all the gossip, they stuck to the fairy tale. Every public move became part of the show. A kiss on the cheek, a whisper in the ear, a shared laugh at a premiere. But behind closed doors, their problems were getting bigger, and putting on a front was draining them. By 2023 and 2024, the rumors were everywhere. Reports said they were living separate lives, and photos of them alone at events just made things worse. But still, they insisted they were together. But as everyone would soon see, even the best performance can't last forever, and by 2025, the truth was impossible to ignore. The Split, 2025. In September 2025, the talk that had been floating around for years turned out to be true. Nicole Kidman filed for divorce in Davidson County, Tennessee, ending their marriage of almost 20 years. The papers were simple, almost cold, just mentioning irreconcilable differences, but behind those few words was the weight of nearly 2 decades of love, sacrifice, and unspoken struggles. According to People, Nicole and Keith had already been living apart before the filing, basically ending things after 19 years. For fans who thought of them as Hollywood's golden couple, this made the news even more shocking, proof that they'd been drifting apart for a long time before it became official. For Nicole, the decision was tough. Sources said she had spent months struggling with it, torn between her love for family and needing to take care of herself. Friends described her as heartbroken but determined, someone who knew she couldn't be both a wife and a caretaker anymore. For years, she had been the strong one, the foundation keeping Keith steady. But in the end, she chose to protect herself instead of continuing a pattern that was leaving her empty. The divorce papers also revealed some details. Nicole asked for primary custody of their daughters, Sunday Rose and Faith Margaret, with Keith sharing in decisions about their lives. This arrangement made sense to many. Nicole's life revolved around the girls, while Keith's travel schedule made daily parenting difficult. Interestingly, Nicole and Keith both waived spousal and child support, suggesting that their finances had always been separate and that neither was trying to take advantage of the other's wealth. Still, even with legal documents that seemed calm and calculated, the emotional impact was huge. The world was surprised by the news. Fans who had looked up to their marriage as proof that true love could survive fame were disappointed. Tabloids wasted no time framing the breakup as a disaster. Nicole as the woman who had finally had enough, Keith as the troubled artist undone by his demons. But if Nicole's filing was deliberate and controlled, Keith's response would be anything but subtle. Just days later, he took the stage without his wedding ring, turning a concert into an intense public confession. And for the first time, his song spoke louder than any legal statement ever could. Just days after the split was announced, Keith Urban took the stage in Pennsylvania on his tour. But this wasn't just another show. It felt like a raw, honest look at a guy dealing with heartache in real time. From the moment he walked out without his wedding ring, fans knew this show would be different, and they were right. The moment that stood out most was during his song, "You'll Think of Me." Usually he sings, "Take your space and take your reasons." But that night, he changed it to "Take Your Unreasonable Reasons." Recordings quickly spread online, and many thought it was a jab at Nicole and the breakup. Even more telling were the changes to his setlist. Keith left out "The Fighter," a song from 2016 thought to be about Nicole, which he often sang with her in mind. Leaving it out, along with the changed lyrics, made people think Keith was changing his music to reflect the end of his marriage. TMZ also covered the show, noting that Keith wasn't cutting songs out, but the way he put the set list together that night got people talking. Some fans saw it as letting go, others as bitterness, but everyone agreed. It wasn't just another concert. But even with all the drama, there were sweet moments. During Heart Like a Hometown, pictures of Keith with his daughters flashed on the screen, reminding everyone that family was still the center of his world, even as his marriage fell apart. For fans, the night felt like more than a concert. It was part confession, part therapy, and part public statement. Every lyric change and set list choice was talked about online, making it clear that Keith's songs had become his most revealing statement. While Keith was dealing with the breakup under the stage lights, Nicole Kidman took a different path. Instead of changed lyrics and angry performances, she let quietness and small gestures tell her story. Just weeks after the announcement, Nicole showed up at a movie event without her wedding ring. She looked elegant and calm, but you could see a sadness in her eyes that no amount of poise could hide. This was Nicole's way of dealing with the pain, not with big outbursts, but with quiet strength. She turned her attention to her daughters, Sunday Rose and Faith Margaret. Paparazzi snapped pictures of her walking hand in hand with them through Nashville, her protective touch showing where her priorities were. Friends said she was focusing on family life, determined not to let the chaos of the breakup affect her daughter's stability. For Nicole, this moment brought back memories. Years ago, her split from Tom Cruise left her estranged from her adopted kids, Isabella and Connor, a hurt that never fully went away. This time, she refused to let history repeat itself. Reports said she sought primary custody of Sunday and Faith, making sure they had stability as the marriage ended. In her career, Nicole went back to what she knew, her work. She showed up at industry events looking professional, her career continuing to thrive even as her personal life changed. But the difference between her public appearances and Keith's stage shows just highlighted the different ways they were dealing with loss. Nicole's quietness was powerful in its own way. Where Keith's songs shouted, her calm behavior whispered strength. She didn't need to change lyrics or make public statements. Her message was clear. She was moving forward, not with bitterness, but with focus on her daughters, her career, and her own sense of peace. And in some ways, that quiet strength may have said more than any song could. So the story of Nicole Kidman and Keith Urban isn't just about a marriage that ended, it's about what happened along the way. For almost 20 years, they were Hollywood and Nashville's it couple, a symbol of love conquering fame, distance, and addiction. For a long time, it seemed like they had it all. But behind the smiles and red carpet moments, they were two people shaped by past hurts, trying to heal each other while dealing with their own issues. Nicole, scarred by the loss of her children in her first marriage, wanted stability. Keith, battling addiction and anxiety, craved freedom. Their love was real, but so were their struggles, and eventually, those struggles became too much to bear. The divorce papers might say irreconcilable differences, but the truth is more complex. It wasn't one fight that ended their marriage. It was years of distance, sacrifice, and unsaid words that built up to a breaking point. What makes their story so interesting isn't just the breakup, but how they dealt with it. Keith turned his pain into art, pouring emotion into his songs and letting the world see his struggle. Nicole, on the other hand, responded with quiet strength, focusing on her children and moving forward with grace. For fans, the end of their marriage was sad. It shattered the illusion of the perfect celebrity romance, but it also reminded everyone that even the biggest stars are human. Underneath the glamour, they face the same challenges: love, loss, and the search for balance. And maybe the most important lesson is what Nicole once said: "It's not about perfection. It's about showing up again and again." For nearly 2 decades, she and Keith did just that, but sometimes showing up isn't enough. Sometimes, the greatest love stories don't end in happily ever after. They end with the quiet realization that love, no matter how strong, isn't always enough to last forever. What do you think about their story? Let us know in the comments below. And if you like this video, hit subscribe and ring the bell so you never miss our next deep dive.